And good evening, and welcome to another evening. Oh, let me move that on the Dusty Feet. Looking forward to this evening's chat, and we'll have a good time. We're continuing. This is the last of our homework series for this episode 9, Loving Your Enemy. Okay. The website has updates, latest sites. We've moved obviously to YouTube, so we're going to have all those updates, and we'll be eventually moving these videos over to YouTube with playlists and all of that kind of stuff. That should be fun. This is the last of the Love Your Enemy series. This is episode 9. This is our fourth part. We're wrapping it up. Then we're going to move on. And tonight, Jim Wern's in the house. We'll close this. We'll close this down. We get ready to roll to the next episode in the series. But we'll figure that out later. And as always, on the Dusty Feet, this is a place where we can safely explore the endless ways of God, interconnection of His creation, where belief understandings may be challenged, divine misunderstandings may exist, and traditional teachings might falter as we pursue connection, context, and community with God and each other here in an environment of grace and love. So here we go on the Dusty Feet. And there we go. Just so we know, Jim Wern's in the house. But but Jim Wern's in his house, right?
Yeah,
Jim
exactly.
Wern's in his house, and I'm in my house. So, what's up, buddy?
Not much. I'm enjoying the warmth outside at 96 degrees. It's not as humid as it is where you're at,
True
but
story.
hey, woo.
True. Yeah, we look for the small blessings, right? The little things. And if we were in Tucson, it'd be a dry heat, right?
Yeah,
I was in Tucson.
exactly.
Yeah. It's a dry heat. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up this Love Your Enemy, and we're going to kind of tie things in together. Now we can cover the entire topic that goes over, talk about things that hit us. You and I were both talking already earlier that this is the gut punch. And it's interesting because even Mackie talks about this being like the peak of the mountain kind of deal, where he's talking about this, and you're kind of working up to what he's doing, and when you get to here, you think, well, I can do that maybe, and I can, not be angry, not hate, and I get this, and I get this. Then I go covenant, and I look at it in covenant relationship, and I go, okay, that's gonna be a little tougher, but I think I can get there, blah 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 blah, and then we get this.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you're doubled over in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like his coach just wants to throw the rag into the ring. Go, I give up. In that deal. And yeah. So we'll do this. So let's play it. This last clip, and then we'll talk. Yes, we'll have coffee and talk. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Talking.
So enjoy the last clip from episode 9 of Love Your Enemy from Tim Mackie and the Tim Mackie Archives.
Naturally gravitated towards people, towards giving a kind welcome or a hug or a hello to the people who you know that are going to give you kickback, right? Who are going to give you agape in return. And they're probably people that you know and that you have some history with. That's just how we operate. And Jesus, he just like, dang it. He just uncovers what an actually self-centered process that is. And how the kingdom is a kingdom that reflects not how human communities tend to operate. The kingdom is a community that operates by children reflecting their Father who is in heaven. And that's exactly what he means in verse 48 when he says, "Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect." Man, many of us have read verse 48 and have just been like, that's it, I'm done. I'm done for, I'll try, and give it my best shot, but don't expect much. And part of it is our English word perfect. Man, we could do a whole teaching just on this verse right here. Well, we'll go here. Sorry. We'll do it. We'll do one. We can't even talk about Leviticus 11 and 1 Corinthians 11 right now, but that's okay. It's the word teleos. And if you were to do a word study in the New Testament, you will find the English word and the context in which this word gets used most, it's the word mature. This is a word used to describe someone who has reached a completion point in their growth and development as a human. Or if you look at the passages that Jesus is alluding to right here, it's the idea of being complete. And this is both a command, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect, but it's also a promise. There is something about when a human being intentionally steps over some relational divide, some boundary tribal line, and performs an act, chooses an attitude and performs an act of concrete benevolence and generosity and kindness to someone who, let's just say, outside your circle, much less someone who's outside your circle who hates you and who you don't particularly like either. But to go against the grain of every intuition that seems natural as a human and to look with compassion and perform an act of generosity. Jesus says humans are never more like God than they are in that moment. There's something about love, and not the fuzzy stuff, right? This right here, biblical love. Choosing to view someone as a human being with dignity, regardless of their behavior or what they've done to others or to me, and to do a concrete act of kindness. When humans do that, when disciples of Jesus do that, it's this teaching, I'm certain, that inspired that beautiful poem in 1 John chapter 4. Brothers and sisters, let us love one another, for love is from God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God because God is love. There's something about these actions, the disciples of Jesus, it's like we're participating in the very heartbeat of God. We are entering into the meaning of the universe. When we deny what seems so natural to our broken, selfish condition, and we perform a concrete act, despite our own feelings about it, right? Some actions you do because you feel like doing them. There are some things you do as an action, and the feelings might have to follow. And when disciples of Jesus do this, we're participating in the very life and essence of God's own being. This is I don't even know what other words to use, right? But that idea itself of verse 48 is worth many cups of tea of prayer and humble reflection. And just think about it. Most of us have had some moment, right? Some altruistic moment where this came out of you in some way, right? And if you've ever had that experience where you've done an act like that and you reflected back on it, it's like the mountain. It's so beautiful. It's so compelling. You can look at it, others can look at it and just say like, there's something about that act, agape, that sums up what it means to be a human being. Are you guys with me? Like we know it deep inside of us. That's what this is about. And so Jesus, with these words, this is this mountain in the history of human conversation about what it means to be human. And Jesus just plants this mountain of his teaching right here. And it's the hardest thing that you and I will ever do. And it's also, I'm convinced, there's a reason why this is the last teaching. I think it's this climactic teaching. Because this is what the whole deal is about. And when Jesus' disciples do this, things happen. The disciples of Jesus who have made the most deep and significant impacts in human history are people who have chosen this course. And they're specifically people who have chosen this course and ended up with a fate much like Jesus himself. in our culture, there is still one individual who's an icon. We name streets after this man. And he's presented as an icon of justice in our culture. He saw everything he was doing deriving out of this command and teaching of Jesus right here. Who am I talking about? This is two things. This is one, I think this is my favorite and most, I think, impactful picture of Martin Luther King Jr. It was a day in 1963, and he came out of his front house. Someone had, burned a cross, happened many times, burned a cross in his front yard. And it's such a powerful story. And he got up in the morning, he put on his suit, his best suit, and he went out to the front yard. The reporters are there, and he picks up the cross and pulls it out of the grass, and he begins to utter a prayer that God would show favor and bless the people who did this. Now, the way that Martin Luther King Jr. gets presented in our culture, because he was trying to communicate this to a wider audience, he did so many essays and speeches where he doesn't talk about Jesus, and those are the ones that have become famous. Right? Read his letters from Birmingham jail, and you will see that this man, he had lots of flaws like we all do, but this was it, man. This is what drove this man, and you can see it reflected in this quote here. He says, "The ultimate weakness of violent retaliation is that it is a descending spiral, begetting the very thing it seeks to destroy. Instead of diminishing evil, it multiplies it. Through violence you may murder the liar, but you cannot murder the lie, nor establish the truth. Through violence you may murder the hater, but you do not murder hate. In fact, violence merely increases hate, and so it goes. Returning evil for evil, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend."
Yet notice in this, it's logic does not transform an enemy into a friend. I can convince you about Jesus, and I have this deal, and logic will transform the enemy. That's exactly what he said. That's actually Jesus taught. You can logic them into this if you just, get the math right. Right? You can do that. This is brutal. Absolutely brutal. And the poem I have at the end talks about metaphors, but in this metaphor here where we have violence, I'll tell people that will turn and say, well, I'm not a violent person, right? And so you're automatically in that anger murder switch. We go back to one of the earlier teachings that go back to this, that just because you don't kill anybody doesn't mean that what you're doing and saying isn't murder, okay?
Right.
And that includes what we talk about. And in today's social media, I think we fling words like arrows and our intention is to maim and kill. Our intention totally in this is to do that. And it gets, so what hit you?
I think for me, listening to him describe what that kind of godly character, he didn't use these words, but the phrase that sticks in my mind is divine humanity, which is really what we were created to be, a reflection of God.
Yeah.
It's like I remember sitting, and I think I mentioned this in a previous podcast, sitting in a recovery group, with a bunch of guys talking about their addiction and both proximity and degree, and going, oh, at least I'm not that bad. And then I look at this image of what he's describing, and I see someone like Martin Luther King Jr., and I see, of course, the character of Christ, and I go, yeah, I'm not that good. It's like these um, uh, relativity, I guess, is the word I'm looking
We
at.
love relativity.
Yeah, I'm relatively good.
Yeah.
I'm relatively not bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's easy to get lulled into a comfort zone thinking it's all okay
Yeah.
until I measure myself up
Yeah.
to the standard of Christ, and not in a legalistic, judgmental, woe is me,
Yeah.
I'm a bad
Yeah.
person, but just the true reflection in the mirror and go, you know what, Jesus, I want to be more like you because what I see,
Yeah.
I'm not real proud of.
Yeah. We get to a point. I I took a trip this week, and being in a crowd with a group of people, you saw people that you might, and this is a very trite. I'm just throwing out a thought process that hit me whilst it's going on. Is you'll
Yeah.
see somebody, for instance, in a scooter, okay, and you're going, they don't look disabled to me. They must be lazy and whatever, or whatever, or da da da. And we
Mhm.
start filling in blanks. And I said, I personally want to view you differently. I want to see you and view you differently. I don't even know you from I didn't even bother. Was I so crass to even think a thought, and yet be so selfish and so self-centered as to not even bother to ask,
Right.
to not even love you enough to care to ask a question, skip a relationship. I'm talking just asking a question. How rude and arrogant and bold, and that just boggles me. And I was, and it was a challenge. And I put it, it said, loving more than the unlovable. Okay. In one of those pieces, we have this point where we go, well, we love in our family and our friends, and then we want to get it. Then we want to love the homeless guy because they're just, they're in a destitute state and they're living without a home, and sometimes they're dirty
Yeah.
and they smell, and and they're begging for stuff, so they're the unlovable, right? This bubble phrase that we like to do. And you go, and like, and Jesus turns and says, pagans do that. Yeah, there's brilliant agencies that do that don't have God in the equation at all.
Right.
But are they expressing God's care and concern for His creation? Yes. So then we have a whole nother question we ask, right? That's a hard one. You mentioned that children reflect their father, and in today's society, I think that's what I see missing the most is reflecting the father. We talk about this time, and there's those that will say this is a test of God. Okay, and here's the funny part is they think it's their test, the infamous them, right? In other words, the test isn't yours. The test is obviously them and whatever they do, and you go, as soon as you take that mentality, I think Jesus says, you're missing the point. Because, like I said, even the pagans do that. Is that, how do you do that and not? A guy, a Jen I know, said on a point where he goes, does that mean I have to love a Democrat? Okay. And we have had the privilege of being on a Clubhouse. For those who, I hope you know what Clubhouse is. If you don't, go look it up. Okay. It's an audio only discussion group. Yeah. And it's where you'll have moderators in there that talk. They're the topic people, and you can sit and just listen. That's the nice part about it. You can go in, you need to sign up with your name. You need to be honest, and to me, I think that's one of the important parts. Are there those who are probably still going with pseudonyms? Sadly enough, it's probably true. But I know that Clubhouse intent was you're going in face up, okay, and then you can speak your voice, and then you can go in and do the deal. And here's the nice part: if you want to go and listen, you can go and listen. If you want to talk, they have to invite you up, onto the platform to speak. If not, go open your own classroom and talk. But you're not going to get into these battle splitting back and forth stuff, which was cool. But this one group that we belong to, what's the title of the group again?
It's called the House Church.
House Church.
Yeah, that's the main thing. And then the discussion that we've been having is on racial reconciliation.
Right. And the House Church. So if you're on Clubhouse, go look up the House Church. Carolyn Ega. Mm-hmm. It is Ega, right? Okay. Carolyn Ega is the primary moderator. Jimmy, I know you're one of the sub moderators, and Dennis, and then there's other people that are tied to it as well. But it opened with, right now we're talking about racial reconciliation, and I brought up that the hypocritical side of church to even address the issue was a tough part, and it's a sobering thought. But the beginning conversation we had was on church and politics, and we were specifically talking about how we treat our brothers and sisters. These are the ones you're supposed to love, right? That are not on the same side ticket that you are. And can we do that and love them? Because here's a simple deal. Because we talked about, can you do this? And my answer, which is crass and rude and bold, says no. And that's because we can't even do it like the pagans, where you can't love somebody and let them be. And we don't. We're brutal on the part. This particular group, I like that was willing to address it and talk about it and love, and get to hear Carolyn, get to hear you, get to hear people that are on the Republican and Democratic side, and they're both, and you think like that should be a kingdom issue, and it's not. And this love issue of how we understand and grow together while we do this shows us we need to look through that to the brother and sister that's on the other side. Once we can even start to do that, the answer is not, do you have to love a Democrat? You have to embrace a Democrat. From there, then you can start an enemy. Okay? Because we're just talking about people on your church side of things.
Right.
Skip those that aren't. And that's hard.
It's hard when we're so entrenched in what we think are valid biblical godly beliefs that are really rooted more in our experience in our culture.
Cultural,
But they're so intertwined, we don't know how to separate them if we're not good students of the Word, deeply connected to the person of Jesus and to the character of God. It's easy to just keep those lies perpetuating because they're never challenged.
Yeah, and how do we do that? And what's the expectation from our Father on the other end? And I liked this. This is one of those things that I've been, me personally, been on a journey with, is where Mackie goes, because we have this famous "Be perfect as your Holy Father is perfect," right? And so we have this very Greek view of what this is, right? And yet, when you go look at teleos, from the scriptural perspective of what that is, even Mackie said it. It's mature, and that's actually the twist that you get. The same thing if you go look in Hebrew. So it's the same. It's the same piece. Okay, so we're in the Greek deal of flawless, and you miss the point if you miss the difference between perfect being flawless and perfect being mature, which falls into, and it was Mackie's choice of word, which I like that he threw it out there, was complete. Okay. So now when you're talking about complete, you're talking about things like fulfillment, right? In that setup. So now you go, Okay, so it's not about an end or a deal. It's about maturity is character reflection.
Right.
And one would argue that there has to be a certain amount of growth through that, right? You're not born mature.
Right.
Jesus was not born mature.
No.
Mackie, I love, he even, there's a couple points where he talks about this would have been ingrained in Jesus' culture. This is what would he been raised on. This is where he cut his teeth on. This is where he had a full understanding and grasp of Psalms, the Torah, right? And how that worked. And but it's not until his ministry at 30, mature, that we get this. Because one could argue, if he had a supernatural download, which is not God's way, hasn't worked that way throughout history, and it didn't, because if you were going to do that, the time to do that, the perfect moment to do that would have been at the mountain.
Right.
He has the original audience there, and he downloads it all to them. And they get Matrix, I knew jujitsu, Morpheus says,
Right.
show me, yeah. But he doesn't.
No.
When he has the disciples, they download, he doesn't. The infamous upper room, download, doesn't. Okay? God doesn't work that way.
No.
And I don't think Jesus had the same deal. He had to mature and get to this point where the Father had, you have to live life, and I believe Jesus had to, I don't know, I want to say this carefully, earn by obedience and doing and following and being, to get to the point where he says, okay, God says, okay, now we're going to start that next stage in your life, your ministry stage. Until that point, you're a worker. He was following his father's footsteps, did whatever the father's trade was, and helped his family make money. He's 30 years old. He's been doing that for a long time. You argue you're working with your father from your early teens. So say he was 15, just for round figures. He spent 15 years doing that. He wasn't wandering around, on this early ministry. He's on the corners handing out tracts and doing his thing. He's learning, growing, showing, right? And then God says, okay, now it's time. Live.
What was the and you might know this just from some of the studies you've done, and I can't remember looking back over the studies I did a long time ago. A rabbi, how was there an age that you had to be before you could become a rabbi?
No, actually, this is a good point. Okay, so now we're going to get into maturity and community and elders and all that thought process. Okay, but let's go to something a little more scriptural and concrete, and it gives us some idea of these things and the expectations they had. Let's go back to the priesthood. Okay, now don't forget, the priests had multiple functions.
Right.
There was only one that was one high priest. Then there were groups of families that had to do sacrifices, and those that had to do this and clean up and carry things when they picked up and moved the Mishkan, right? The tabernacle. They picked it up, had to move it, and everybody had the deal, and they had to carry the stuff. So from 0 to 20, you learned what your task was.
Right.
You knew that this is your task, right? So you learned it till you were 20. Then you worked from 20 to 50. You did your task in whatever it was.
Right.
And then from 50 on, you didn't work anymore. You were done in the active role, meaning those guys are doing that job, whether they're slaughtering, whether they're cleaning up, whether they're, taking the grains, whether they're passing stuff out, whether they're distributing it to the community, whatever their roles are that they're doing. Because there's multiple roles. It's not all about being a high priest. It's all the other support roles. We all talk about that. And we miss that point. I joke that when people talk about being reincarnated, they always come back somebody famous. They're never Joe Schmo. You know, They're always somebody big. And
Yep.
it's like when you think priesthood, it's a get the high priest out of your head.
Right.
I said, get to what everybody else did. Go find out what families, because scripture tells you what families carried this, did this, do that. That's what Korah's rebellion was about. Go read Korah's rebellion. Go read what his family did and how he did. You want to find a fun story, people? Go look at Korah and you'll learn something. Okay, in that. So you have a good point. That's that point, and then move on. So from that perspective, I would say now from the rabbi's then perspective, we have this picture today that rabbis are these old gray-haired guys with the ringlet curls, depending on what Jewish orthodoxy you espouse to, right? And yet, when I work with the Aleph Beta folks, and Emu Shalev and David Block, and these guys, they're in their 30s. They might have started their rabbi training, they decided to go the rabbi route, right? So they might have been in their late 20s to do that. And then when they start being active rabbis, are they running a synagogue, right? As we have this picture to do this, the answer is probably no. But are they doing rabbinic functions? I'd say yes. Yeah. I think we have people that are trying to run churches in their 20s and 30s that have no business running churches in their 20s and 30s.
But do you love them?
I love them more than you know. And they're the loved ones, right? They're supposed to be the ones I love so much. I said, so I'm saying ask for help.
Yeah.
That goes into the elder side. And then we're actually getting ready to talk about that at the Vine. We're starting to chat. This open discussion about elders just came up, and it's a good discussion to get into, because you think about that and what are God's points on that?
Yeah.
Okay. That mature side tells you that there's when somebody's mature. Do you get that? In other words, when you look at somebody, that's not an first observation descriptive word. Okay? You look at somebody, you say they look professional, they look astute, they carry themselves well. But you don't say it as you've seen in action to mature. You might say they look mature because, and the phrase usually follows it because of their gray hair. A statement like that,
I'm
right?
very mature.
Very mature. But yet, that is really, truly a phrase. It is only, I'm going to use two words, displayed and earned. Okay. In the military, we have a deal where you salute rank.
Right.
I'm acknowledging the position you hold.
Right.
And that in the hierarchy of what is deal, I'm acknowledging that rank. Right. Okay. That has nothing to do with maturity and respect.
Right.
I can, for lack of a better term, I can respect your position as the commander, as a lieutenant, as a whatever. But we earn our, just in life. Scripture says the same thing. We earn that position of maturity. You do that by interaction in your community, in that military community, in that church community, whatever you're at, in the military community in particular. Then, because I've had people, and there's like on one hand, I can count the guys that I would walk off a cliff with, one of those kind of deals. And two of them are officers, three of them are officers, I'm sorry, and two are enlisted guys that I would do that to. But they earned that with their lives.
Right.
All of them were, for lack of a better term, mature. Okay? And they had earned that by sharing it, not only showing it, but teaching it.
Yeah.
Every single one of them mentored and taught that, which is what Jesus did his whole scripture. Yeah? Notes. Don't you love when you can't read your own scribble? To step over a line to show love. That was one of the lines that he said, which kind of hit. To go over, like you said, when can I go across that line and say, there's every once in a while we'll see a meme come across on Facebook or something, and you'll see after all the protests and all the deal, you'll see somebody in a line that's actually over being friendly, peaceful, talking to the cops. Right. And in this racial reconciliation world, a charged world, there's a black guy talking to a white cop is usually the meme pictures that we see, and realize that that's not the point, that something else can happen in that in that scenario. I think a very bold statement might have been, and I know those people old enough to remember on this broadcast, and those that are need to share this, is something, the pictures say Tiananmen Square.
Yep.
Okay. And the tough balance there was, she's there standing in front of the tank. And you realize at that moment, there is absolutely nothing you can do to alter the outcome. Mm-hmm. Nothing. She could only love the person in the tank. That's it. And say there's a different way to do this. Yeah. There's a different way to do this. Maybe it was because the world was getting to a point where that kind of news was everywhere. Mm-hmm. If that was not on camera, who knows what it would have been. We don't know that answer, right? Mm. But that we can do this a different way.
As I'm processing all of this and trying to think through, what does that kind of character look like in me? There's that, I'm willing to do something, and then there's the I'm willing to be willing to do something.
I'm willing to be willing.
Yes. Willing to be willing. So that's at least a step in the right direction, but I'm not there yet.
I think but it has to start there before you can get to the
right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Fair.
And so I'm at this place right now where I'm going, okay, I want to have that kind of character that in those circumstances I go, okay, God, this is what I want to do. That to me is the willing to be willing.
Right.
That to me is the immature moving toward maturity. Yeah. To me, the maturity is, it's not even a consideration to me to should I or should I not do it. It's not even a thought process of how's this going to look, or, am I doing it for the right reasons, or all of those, again, that's, I'm still in my head. It's all about me. And it's not about what God is doing.
Right.
And it's the place I want to be is, I'm not even thinking about me. There's a person here who needs love.
Yeah.
Who needs something. Yeah. I'm just going to go do it. Yeah. Because that's the way Jesus responded. Yeah. And I'm not looking at going, well, if Jesus did it, I want to do it. No.
Right.
I want to just do it.
Right.
And when I can get to that place, and there's not even an afterthought afterward of, oh, did I do the right thing? No, that's just part of the expression of the divine through my humanity taking place. And then if someone says, wow, that was really amazing, I go, no, that was just me being me, God being God.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah. Now we're getting to that, to okay, God help me be mature. Maybe that's one of the prayers to do. Mm-hmm. And part of that, I think, boils down to that prayer discussion. We're talking about boldness of deal. And I'm on record as saying I don't like public prayer. I'm not a fan of public prayer. I'm not a fan of preachers getting up and having these long prayers that end up being mini sermons where I've got you capsulated. You're going to be quiet. You're going to have your heads bowed, your eyes closed, whatever it is, and you're stuck listening to me because I'm praying. So you have to listen to a prayer, right? And I go, nothing of that shows in scripture at all. Matter of fact, when they ask him about it, Jesus says, you, his disciple, you got a room. Go pray there. Okay? Meaning it's not about somebody else. It's not about that point. If you want to talk about God, that's great. But guising it and painting it over and calling it prayer is not, we're doing a disservice to prayer. Okay? We are literally doing disservice to prayer, which means we're doing disservice to God, which means we get a whole nother twist. And I know somebody's going to throw rocks at me for this one, I guarantee it. And how we do that and live that, like I said, so in our life, can we do that and not think about the other person and act without and know that God has the balance out in the end anyways, regardless of what happens. Did I share this before about the car pickup ride that I got in Germany? Did I share this on here?
I don't think.
If I didn't, I'll bring it real quick. So I had my car broke down in Germany. Young newlyweds, married only a couple of years kind of deal, And I'm on a trip from somewhere to somewhere, and my car breaks down late at night. And I'm on this road. I think I'm between Ramstein and Zweibrücken. There's highways and that kind of deal. And this family stops. I'm a guy, nobody. I know he's a GI, knows I'm a GI, but it's from our license plates. You understand? I'm not in an American car. I'm in a French Deux Chevaux, right? My favorite car of all time. I'm in a little French Deux Chevaux. He stops with his wife and child in the car, right? Stops. Doesn't know me, but he knows I'm in the military because, again, license plates. Of course, serial killer, covered license plates, but nonetheless, license plates. Helps me communicate so we can get a tow truck to come take the car to this place. We follow this to the place to make sure the car gets to the garage. Then he drives me to my house. Okay? And he has an extra coat, an extra fatigue jacket that's dead, it's old, and it's old and steel. And he gives me his fatigue jacket because I'm not dressed for the trip, and I had no intention. I was going for somewhere and didn't have this. And it was cold. It was a winter in Germany scenario. And he takes time to do this and then gives me the coat. Okay? And leaves. No money, no expectation, nothing. I didn't even know if I got his name and his number and his family and stuff. He just did it. Mm-hmm. Just did it. And I remember thinking, wow, that's so cool. And then I got a chance to do that. Like I said, I got to do that down the road. I did that to somebody. I don't remember who they were. I don't remember the whole story. But I know I did something similar. He got the jacket. He got the deal. Almost like pay it forward. Mm-hmm. Okay. But if you didn't think about it, I can't even tell you the story because it wasn't about me.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
It was about what was going on at the moment and those kind of deals. If I could have more of those moments in my life, where we can say that we did that we have this, and Jesus talks about this constantly, and he lives it out constantly. And when he tells the he heals the leper, and he goes, "Don't tell anybody." Okay, don't go and say yes, and make sure you tell them Yeshua of Nazareth did yes. Y-E. Let me write this down for you. So you get this right, get the pronunciation right. It's very important, and we pass this on, right? No, he says shh. Okay. Mm-hmm. Actually, side note, just to throw a loop into something we're going to twist. Jesus tells the demons to be quiet, and they're quiet. They're done. It doesn't happen. He tells a human to do it, and they don't. Shut up. Okay? We have choice. Now, what we do in our heads is we think, what a glorious thing, I would go and tell them on everybody. And you go, that sounds good, but now you're saying intent. So
Yeah.
now you get to decide to listen to him or not. That's an uncomfortable discussion because we want to go, oh, he's so glad he got paid. He didn't listen to him.
Yeah.
He didn't listen to the master. He didn't. I don't want to be the guy
Yeah.
that didn't listen.
That's when you realize how self-absorbed we are, because that's when it became about the person who was healed.
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah.
got to tell people, I can't hold this in,
Yeah.
rather than listening to the master.
He
And that-
said, go to the priest, make sure that you can get back in community because he wants him plugged back into community. But you have to go to the priest. He didn't say, now just go do what you want to do. He knew what had to be done. They had this step. Go make sure that the community knows you're safe.
Yeah.
Then you can plug in. Now you can reflect me in a plugged in community.
Yeah.
That's literally loving the unloved. And will argue the hated. Pretty doggone close too. They're one step below Romans.
Yeah.
Tax collectors fit in that wedge somewhere in that deal. Lepers, not much more.
Yeah.
No, for multiple reasons. They weren't vaccinated. I don't know. Sorry, I'm going to get in trouble. We have this. Change to view with dignity. Can I look at you and see you with the dignity that God sees you? Okay? And the answer most often is no. And we need to change that. And what does that take? Like I said, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out. I am.
Yeah.
For all the gray hair on my head, trying to figure what that looks like, that I can consistently look to you and see. We were talking about where I was being in a scooter chair, and you look at the people, and you all look at them, and you make this determination. They don't look disabled to me. They look lazy. They're doing the deal. They don't look disabled enough to me. Whatever this is, and you go, oh my gosh, how crass, how rude, how eccentric, how ego-driven I am that I'm going to make this opinion about you without even giving you the dignity of asking. The dignity of engaging, the dignity of discussion, the dignity of care. I've stripped you of all of that by automatically sticking something with you. And I was choosing to say and stop and pray and said, whatever it is that causes them not be able to have the freedom of walk that I'm having at that very moment, that I'm walking, I'm holding hands with my wife, we're walking around having a wonderful time, and they can't walk around, walk and enjoy that. There's a freedom to walking. Scooters are nice, but there's places you can't go, and to turn and then to love them and give them the dignity and respect, open the door, let them in line, follow them on the walk out, not cut them off, give them space to see. You're sitting down, you're walking around like a 5-year-old in your height. That's what a 5-year-old sees. Everybody's butts in the middle of their backs, And I remember being a kid, we were in that cattle run. We used to go to races when we were little kids. It was looking around now. Of course, as the Wern guys, we still don't look over the top of the crowd at all. But at least I see a little more through the crowd than we did as kids when we were young. And that view. And I want to help them have the view of, let me help you feel the dignity. Let me be the eyes for you. Let me lift you up. Metaphorically speaking.
Yeah. And I have to be honest to say, I don't know that I have achieved that level of maturity yet, where I'm selfless enough to not even think about it and just act on it.
Yeah, it is like I said, it's beyond just the unlovable, meaning it's beyond the disabled. It's beyond that. In other words, that's going the right direction. That we're, like you said, we're making those steps to get there. But eventually it's going to be like Mackie said, to look at Zacchaeus, who just backhanded you, and say, "You're having a crappy day," and I get it out. Get it out. I've had people that I've talked to. I've just said, "Look, just vent. I want to be a vent. Just come vent at me," and I say, "Throw up on me." I don't care. It washes off. It washes off. Just throw up on me. Then we can talk.
Yeah.
Until you believe you can throw up on me, there's only so much you'll talk to me about.
Yeah.
Yeah? If I can let you do that, if I can show you I'm not scared of you, not because of any power, will, Gerald, is that because I have a dignity and care for you. So I can't be scared of you. If I love you the way God loves, that fear doesn't exist. Then I can let you smack me. I can carry your bag to your house. Not just the top of the hill, Roman soldier. Let me carry it to your doorstep. It's an entirely different, and I'd almost say foreign. However, when I say foreign, it scares me because I've lived in other communities and seen other communities around the globe, and you see this
Yeah.
in culture. You see respect for maturity. You see care and concern for others. You see the lifting up. And they're the Gentiles.
Yeah.
We're in America, we're the most selfish nation on the planet. I won't even give that. The Canadians can't even have that role. Skip the French. Skip the French too. Well, they're might be third in a second, but America, number one.
Well, it's sad when we are so self-absorbed, which is what we are,
Yeah.
and I will include myself in that.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
am.
Trust me, stuck in the group. Yeah.
I cannot separate myself with dignity.
With yeah,
um,
with dignity and maturity. No. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That people like a Martin Luther King Jr. stand out,
Yeah.
and they weren't doing anything grand and glorious. They were simply being humane. In the truest sense of what humanity should look like.
Yeah.
Um, if that's the case, if he stands out, it tells me something about the character of the culture that I'm in,
Yeah.
and something needs to change. And I know that that's a lot of in what Jesus was teaching, is he was showing us a different life, so that we could look at our lives and go, well, this is nothing.
Yeah.
I want something better.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hoping, something like this, that we walk away going, not defeated, oh, I'm never going to get there, but
Right.
no, I want to strive for being that kind of person.
Right. Because and if you think that, well, we can't be mature, but God will take care of me, I think you're in for a rude awakening. That God is still going to hold us accountable. Is there the grace that stops the, as we put it, die, the second death, the die game? Okay, because we all die. So you don't it doesn't stop you from dying. Stops you from die. Okay, but that doesn't stop you from the consequence of it. Meaning you think that grace gets you that gets you past the die. That doesn't get you past the accountability. That what did you do with my creation? And I'll argue that that's both planet and people. In that setup and how we work. Somebody from the Vine said this. This was cute. Let me see if I can get it. Oh, there it is. Now let's see if I can put it on here so it shows pretty. Oh, look at that. How pretty. So I moved it around. Thank you. And I don't know if I'm worthy to be carried. I don't know about that, but thanks. Yeah, I don't know. We that actions versus feelings. Yeah, that's yeah. That, okay, yeah. This is Joey said this from Big Daddy. This is Joe. So, hey
Hey,
Joey,
Joe.
love you. Wish you were here. So, we had this this feeling where you don't feel love, you don't do this stuff, and we go that we were having this discussion earlier that who determines because we're past time. Who determines who a disciple is?
Yeah,
Okay, and the answer was the teacher.
exactly.
Okay. You don't get to go like I don't get to get so I go buy a USC hat and a shirt,
Mhm.
right? And I say, I'm a USC guy. And you go, USC doesn't think that. And for you, USC is the Trojans. For me, USC are the Gamecocks. So just so you know, we have different coasts on this one, folks. So
Yes,
so we have different USC stuff. But the
absolutely.
reality is that they don't. That the teacher determines that, and the rabbi determined that here.
Right.
So we're a follower of Jesus, supposedly, right? We're a disciple of Jesus. And I go, you don't get to declare yourself a disciple of Jesus.
Right.
You can say, I want to be, I want to reflect, I want to attempt, try to eventually be mature enough to be called a disciple of Jesus. But only Jesus makes that call. You don't get to make that call. That's made by, one would argue that an elder doesn't say, I'm an elder.
Right.
The community says,
Right.
you're an elder. If
It says
you
aspire
say,
to be an elder, but that doesn't make you an elder.
that's right. And the ultimate deal is you can say you love people,
Right.
but if you get nobody that steps forward and says, you say, I love people, I love the world, and then you hear crickets. Okay. Then I think we have a mistake. When people say, I see God's love in him, that's when you become
Yeah.
you're at least picking up the markers that are that goes with the fruit of the spirit, fruit, right? That has multiple characteristics of the fruit, like a strawberry has multiple characteristics. That in that fruit, in those characteristics, that you're part and partial to that. You don't get to call yourself a fruit like a strawberry just because you have a little dotty bumps all over you. You have to have the inside. You have to have the stem. You have to have the red. It all goes together. You don't just get to say, "Well, I do this, so I have the fruit of the spirit because I have little bumps all over me." You go, "Hank, you're missing the point. You need, like your pomegranate. Yeah, you've got the fruit. You got the hard shell. I get that part. I'm not sure you're missing the sweet, important stuff in the middle. Those kind of things. And how do we do that? How do we reflect that back to where the community says you're that?
Yep.
Maybe it's even like, oh, this just hit me. Wow. You're unclean, and you go, and it's them that declares you clean.
Yeah.
And then you're clean. And then you can engage in community, and community can get back with you. Can we do that? I don't know. Holy moly. That hit me hard. We have these, but our actions, it boils down to actions. I hate to say it, that you don't get to do one little quick short one. I was at the end, Facebook, something was going on, and some guy was on the Bible Project guys and and somebody had gotten on, and it, from me and from experience from church, so that smelled a little scammy, but let it roll. And I watched the answers to the guy, and he said, that it's so tough. I'm thinking of ending my life, kind of deal, and we need so much help here. Feed the orphans, blah blah blah. And what I got was a whole bunch of pray for you, pray for you, pray for you, pray for you. A whole bunch of people giving advice and going call the 800 crisis line, not reading the post that the guy was from Uganda, So I'm sorry, but the 1-800-crisis line in America is not gonna, is not gonna get. So not even taking the time to care, to really read, okay, and every single request answer on there. Pray for you, pray for you, pray for you, pray for you. Not one person stepped up, even to the point where they stepped up where somebody could have said, maybe it's a scam to talk to them afterwards. Not one said, I'll send you something. Not one.
Wow.
There must have been 50, 60 responses. Everybody wanted to talk. Everybody wanted to stand up. And I call that the vocal prayer, where you're going to be liberal. You're going to get out in the day, you're going to say to the world, I prayed for them that they, da-da-da, and you didn't want to feed them. Give them your jacket. And it was a deal. And it eventually come up that, yes, he had a scam. But you don't get to back view that and turn and go, well, because you didn't see anybody coming over. Oh, by the way, I knew it was a scam. No. God gets to sort that out. That's God's to sort out. If you don't think God can handle that, then how are you going to handle the Holocaust? Seriously. If you don't think God can handle that and manage that type of that he has to count for that in the end. That's God's job. Ours is to widows, orphans, poor. I mean, he even makes it simple. He says, follow me isn't hard. Meaning on those issues. Am I going to test you as a disciple? Because I think we blur the word follower and disciple.
Yes, we do.
They're not the same. You can follow Jesus, and to follow widows, orphans, poor, that's great. A disciple, he asks for so much more. Yeah?
Yep.
Anything else?
Oh, gosh, yes, tons, but
Tons.
have time to do it.
Well, do we want to stretch another part or enough where we've talked for the...
Honestly,
or do you want to do a red string and we can red string it? And
maybe
take
a
some
red
time?
string on what does it mean to be a disciple?
Okay. Okay. So let's do...
Discussion.
Can you do next week? I know we're on live line online. I'm talking about this,
I
but
think I can. Yeah.
okay. So I'll get it up. So people, you're getting a live deal. Woohoo! So that we'll do red string next week, and we'll talk about being a disciple because that's a good one. Because basically, Mackie says we peaked here, we culminated. This teaching gets repeated, like Martin Luther King's speech. The famous ones are going to do. They weren't told one time. He spoke those many, many, many times. You just have the deal there that we get this reading. Like you said, it takes minutes to read. And Jesus' life for 3 years, he repeats this story again and again and again to multiple groups in multiple locations to catch the kingdom message, right? So now we've gotten this, and he's got this out. He's laid it out. This is the peak. So he's basically laying out, these are defining characteristics of disciples of me. So that's a good question. So we'll talk about, because it's a great segue. It's a great launch pad because it's going to have these characteristics and more.
Exactly.
We have this. We've just started the point. And what's scary is that this is the peak of the start. In other words, we have these elements of what a disciple is, and this one about this is here, and it's okay, and that's going to get us to, because that's eventually going to get you to be able to do what Peter and Paul and every single disciple did, but John
Right.
died for this.
Right.
And John, they tried to kill. The stories that go with that has cut, on those things. So, okay. And Joey, good night. Yeah, we'll talk later. Yeah, Jimmy won't talk. We'll have a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Joey to pieces. Okay, so we'll talk. We'll get that offline. So let's do this. So again, Dusty Feet will make the announcements. Will be done on Twitter. Twitter will catch all, change that kind of stuff. I got to get better at Twitter too. I'm not a tweeter as much as I should. I should tweet, right? Is that the deal? So next week, what isn't here should say next week. Follow the red string. We'll talk about a little bit into starting that discussion of, so what does it take to be a disciple? What is a disciple? What does that really mean? Just because you have a book and a T-shirt and a hat and a bandana around your head, is that the uniform checkout list you go through in the military? Does the fact that you went through the line and got the uniform and got the shaved head and you're in that deal and you're in the chow hall, does that make you in the military? Does it make you a soldier? And so maybe we talk about this in that realm with this, and that I like. So, so this is the poem for tonight. Again, it's from Skip Moen. Metaphors. Change the metaphor. 50 years of fight. 50 years of journey. 50 years of flight. 50 years of yearning. 50 years of failing. 50 years of trying. 50 years of falling. 50 years of rising. Change the metaphor. Stop lying. Skip Moen, Broken Bits, poem from the wasteland. Thanks for being with us tonight on the Dusty Feet.